Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel. My name is Lydia. I am the Fun Finance Queen, and I'm here to make finances more simple, more gettable, and more fun. My goal today is talking about budgeting, but I want to take it a little different style today. So, if you find that spreadsheeting and notes taking and journaling your budget is not working for you, I'm going to give you a simpler method to budget that I personally use. So, let's talk about it today. We're talking about percentage rules of budgeting. So sometimes this could be 70%, 20%, 10%, just to round up your 100, or it could be 60, 20, 20, or 60, 30, 10. It really doesn't matter what the percentage is, but if you use percentages to better manage your money, it's always helpful. So I'm going to use the 70, 20, and 10% rule because that's what I think works for me. So I can only tell you what I've understood. So if this works for you, use it. This is a criteria. If the percentage rule works for you, use it. If you don't use it. Okay. I want you to use something that works for you. Remember, personal finances are personal. I say that all the time. Personal finances are personal. I want you to use something that works for you. So, as an alternative to those spreadsheets that might be driving you nuts, this is a way you can track your expenses by breaking them into 70%, 20%, and 10%. The 70% will be your spending. So, for example, you have to be able to live off that. You have to be able to pay your bills, pay minimum payments on your credit cards, pay whatever you spend every single month, your gas, your food, everything that you need has to be able to fit within that percentage. So for me, I can probably do it with 70%. Now, the next percentage that we need to address is savings. So 20% is a great number to work with. For some people, it's 10%. For some people, it's 5%. Remember, personal finances are personal. Use it your way. The third category is other things or debt payoff, and that would be your 10%. Okay, so we have our 70, which is spending, our 20, which is saving, and our 10, which is other things or debt payoff. So those are our three main categories. Now, as I said before, and I've said this about 3 times in this video, in case you haven't heard me, personal finances are personal. So you choose that percentage that works for you. If, for example, you can live off 80% and you split it up, do it that way so that you have percentages that personalize your budget to you. All right, so that is the 70, 20, 10% rule. What I want to move on next is advantages and disadvantages of this particular way of budgeting. So I'm going to start with the advantages. Why not, right? Keep it simple. This is so simple to use. You don't have to start having a 60-line budget. You don't have to worry about tracking things the way that John Smith does. This is something that works for you. It's simple, it's easier to handle. The next thing that I like about it as an advantage is it's less restrictive. You're not having to categorize every single one of your pennies, but rather you break it into 3 parts and you set it up accordingly. Okay? So one thing that I've said is you could have like 3 direct debits. In the US where I used to live, for example, if you own a bank account, you are charged for that bank account. That's not necessarily so in the UK. Choose bank accounts that you're not charged for, jump onto those. When you get paid, set up a direct debit, and guess what? Your 3 percentages are set aside in different accounts. How cool is that? Once that has been done, it becomes easier to manage, and at that point, you can actually move forward with tracking your budget. Disadvantages. Let's talk about the disadvantages of this particular method of budgeting. Well, the first one is you might need more detail. I am a big picture person, so this tends to work for me. But if you want to be able to track every line item within your 70, 20, 10 percentage range, all you need to do is break that down so you have more detail, okay? It's just something that you need to be able to understand that you can create this or adapt this method to be used your way. The next disadvantage is not everyone can live off 70%. So again, that's where you can decide that I'm going to do an 80-10-10 budget or a 95-5 budget where you have 90% for your living expenses, your 10% for your savings, and 10% for your debt payoff. So just remember, guys, this is personal. So change it as needed to make it work for you. So the key steps to make this possible, I'm going to outline now. So first of all, you break down your spending like we do for every budget. Break it down, track your personal expenses. For example, if you're a freelancer, take an average of your last 3 months, okay? And factor in your partner's income, for example. If you share bills, factor that in to ensure that you're able to see how far your money can stretch together. The next one is allocate your 70%. Decide and make sure that this is doable. Okay, if 70% isn't, you make it 80, make it 90, whatever works for you. And then if you have any extra in your budget, be sure to reallocate it to any of those other areas, to your savings or to your debt payoff. Ensure that you're in a place where you're able to and to tell your money where to go. That's what a budget is, right? You tell your money what to do. So if there's any extra from that large percentage that you choose, 70, 80, 90, whatever it is, reallocate it somewhere else so that money doesn't go through your fingers every month. The next tip is to set aside your 20% for savings or whatever percentage it is. And if you can, at this point, what you might want to do is break that into 3 particular areas. So you could have your first category of savings as part of your emergency fund. Remember, we talked about those unexpected things like your tire popping or something else like that. The second area that you want to track is your retirement funds, for example. If you have any retirement funds, make sure you channel those, that a third of that savings to your retirement fund. And lastly, you want to channel it to what we call sinking funds. So things like you want to go on holiday, you're saving for that holiday as part of your savings. Or you want to buy a car, for example, you could actually channel it that way. So just make sure that your savings also has a name, has a job. Set your savings to ensure that they have somewhere to go, that they have a plan. Because guess what? If your savings don't have a job to do, they will find a job of their own and you will end up spending them. Okay, so just allocate your savings accordingly. And remember, guys, if 20% or 10% is too high, start lower and work your way up to the percentage of savings that you want. That's why I keep saying, guys, that personal finances are personal. Make it work for you. All I'm saying is categorize your money so that your money has a job to do. Tell your money where to go so it doesn't tell you where to go. All right. The last tip is to allocate that percentage that you set aside for paying off debt, etc. So if you remember at the beginning, I talked about your 70% or your largest portion, including your minimum payments. Why did I say minimum payments? Well, that's supposed to happen no matter what happens, right? You're supposed to pay those minimum payments on your credit cards, for example, no matter what. However, with that 10% that you're allocating as paying off debt, for example, that is what you would then allocate to overpay those debts. Okay, so you have your minimum payment in your largest portion of your budget, but in your last or smallest portion of your budget, you also want to make sure you overpay on those debts. We've talked about credit card debt and how it can eat you up. If you have it, we want to make sure that you're eliminating it as best as possible. If you don't have debt, yay, my next step would be to allocate that towards other goals. So put it towards your savings, increase your emergency fund, set some more towards your retirement, or put it towards your sinking funds and make sure you have a holiday once in a while. So guys, I really want to ask this. Stick it in the comments below. Are you going to try any of these things? I hope you do try this budget. And if you do, let me know in the comments below. Remember, guys, I'm here for you to make finances more simple, more gettable, and more fun. And I appreciate it if you would go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.